to Kick-Ass Monthly with John Erigo. This is episode 4. I can't believe we started this 4 months ago, John.
Woo!
It's been a lot
Hey,
of
yeah,
fun.
man, awesome.
And last time in episode 3, we talked about Twisted Sister, and you gave us, you revealed a little story about the fact that Dee Snider revealed to you that you were the subject of the song Don't Let Me Down. And people want to
Yes.
hear that story. They can go back to check that out in episode 3. But you'd also mentioned going on Mark Mendoza's podcast. And I thought we'd spend most of this episode talking about that experience and how that all came about.
Yeah, that was I think in April of last year, something like that.
Okay.
Um Good friend of mine, very good friend of mine, an amazing concert photographer, Delilah Kerhelly, who's based in Queens, New York. Her site is Rockstar Pics with an X dot rocks,
Okay.
and she's on Facebook and stuff. And I was the one that introduced her to my friend Danny Stanton, who is Twisted Sister's he's been like the tour manager slash manager for a very long time.
Wow.
And she went on Mark's show because she got to shoot Twisted a bunch of times through Danny, and and she got friendly with Mark, and Mark asked her on the pod. It's like a pod. It's like it's almost like this, but it's live. They
Yeah,
broadcast
yeah.
it live on I think on Facebook, and then later on they show it on YouTube. So
Okay.
similar to what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and she went on, and they hit it off well. And I guess somewhere along the way, she said, "Hey, you should have John on," and she mentioned Kick-Ass Monthly, and he immediately remembered. So, he had done his homework when I went on too. He knew about Kick-Ass Monthly, which he said he really enjoyed, and he said he checked out Kick-Ass Forever, my website now. And the thing that he liked about both is that we, tried to introduce people to newer up and coming bands, not just report on Iron Maiden and Judas
Yeah, yeah,
Priest.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
we cover bands like the shirt that I'm wearing here, a band like Road Wolf from
Wow.
Austria, who's an amazing, amazing new heavy metal band that sounds like the old school. The difference with Road Wolf is that they produce their music like with a modern production, but it sounds like classic Judas Priest and Accept. It's great stuff. I recommend
Wow.
anybody that's an old school metalhead check out this band Road Wolf. And Mark liked that kind of stuff. He thought it was cool that because that's what we did with Twisted. Twisted was a local Long Island, New York band, and we kind of like took them. I'm gonna say under our wing because we were nobody too, but
Yeah,
we
yeah,
were the
yeah.
first publication that really grabbed onto them, and like JJ French told me that got it about Twisted Sister, and Mark also went and checked out a couple of the Dead End Kidz songs, so we had a lot to talk about. It was very very cool. I was
Okay.
on for about an hour and a half, and it went great. We shot. I asked him a couple of questions about Twisted and stuff too, so it was kind of like a double interview going on. It was kind of fun.
How cool is that? And obviously you've had experience interviewing Dee Snider in the past and working with him. But had you ever met Mark before going on the podcast or had any encounters with him?
Yeah, nothing he would remember.
Yeah,
Casual stuff. Nothing like D.
yeah,
Nothing like D coming over the house. That
yeah,
was
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
special. And D still remembers that too, which is pretty cool. So yeah.
That that
But
that
yeah,
that.
Mark was great. We hit it off. We had a great little session there. We spoke about a lot of stuff. No, it was very, very cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and you had mentioned their band, the Dead End Kids, which I seen something you posted recently in the last couple of days about the fact that the last time you guys did any kind of performance was around I think it was your 50th birthday, like almost 10 years ago. And I know the band's not too active, but do you see like any special one-off performances? Are you ever doing anything like that with the Dead End Kids again?
Well, we wanted to do we wanted to do a show this year because I'm turning 60, but that's supposed to be a secret. This
You know
doesn't
what,
look
John?
60, does it?
I gotta tell you, maybe it's you're promoting all these great metal bands, but you sure don't look your age.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, I kind of messaged the guys and said, um, you know, maybe we should think about something because I was invited to a wedding in the Long Island area, which is, I think, the 14th, which is 4 days after my birthday. And so I was going to try and work it out where I was going to fly up early, during the week and try and sneak in a Dead End Kidz, jam or show
Yeah,
or whatever
yeah,
on Friday and then go to the wedding on Saturday. But as I explained to you, I'm going through personal hell here with my house.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I don't even know if I'm going to be in the position to go. I really, money's tight and stuff, so
Wow,
it
wow.
might have to wait till next year, but that's okay because I'd rather do it right than just do it to do it,
I hear you. Yeah. I
We
mean,
can
at
always
this point, it's been 10 years. So if it ends up being 11 years, I mean, what the heck, right?
well, the last time we played was when I moved here to Florida, which was
Yeah,
my 50th
yeah,
birthday.
yeah.
No, it was 55. We played at
Okay.
50 and 55. So I moved here in October of 2018, and we played later that month. I flew down. I had my woman and I, April, we had tickets to see Metallica in Philly,
Wow.
and it was like towards the end of October. So again, that's what I did. The show on it was like on a Thursday. So I flew into Philly, saw the show, then went to Long Island, and 2 days later we played a gig, and that was 5 years ago. That
Yeah,
was when I turned 55. So it's always like a landmark birthday for
yeah.
me. I don't, I mean, I keep telling them, I said, when are you guys turning certain ages? Let's jam then too, man. So,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
but everybody was into it. It just kind of sucks that
Well, I'm
and the
with you.
last
If you're gonna do it right, right? I mean, you
right,
want,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because I said I explained to you I've been exposed to mold here in the house, so it's kind of screwing me up
yeah,
physically too. So, but I got to get better from that. But that's a whole nother story.
yeah,
But we
yeah, yeah.
did when at the gig, the last gig for 55 5 years ago, we pulled out a gem that we hadn't played in a long time. Was "Shoot 'Em Down" by Twisted Sister. I think you can find that on YouTube. I think actually.
I'll have to look that up. But it's funny you bring up shoot 'em down because I was reading something online. It didn't give a release date or anything, but supposedly this year, Twisted is coming out with the 40th anniversary of Under the Blade.
Yeah. Oh man, that's yeah. Mm-hmm. Pete
And
Way in a barn.
yeah, yeah. And so
And
let
Al,
me, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna
No, I
say,
was gonna. All I was gonna say was the album was recorded in a barn with Pete Way, so how could it go wrong?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I was gonna ask you, what's your favorite Twisted Sister album?
Oh, it's definitely the first one.
Yeah,
Because the first one, like I explained on the last podcast, the last show, whatever you want to call
yeah,
this,
yeah,
the fun hour, fun
yeah,
30
yeah,
minutes.
yeah. There you go. Yeah,
Um, the first one had all those songs that they played in the clubs, and at that time, "Shoot 'Em Down," which was on the album, was like a new song,
mm,
because they had only played it like right before they left to go record. So those songs that we saw them play in the clubs, for us New Yorkers and tri-state area people that were, the fan base for Twisted long before they,
yeah.
got exploded onto the scene. That's the album because that has songs with all the memories of the club shows. So yeah, it's no doubt that it's that first album.
And you feel that you had a connection initially with Twisted because of being from New York yourself?
Yeah, yeah. The first time I saw them, I got snuck into the show. I think I went through that story
Yeah,
last
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
And at that time, I was only 17, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I was 17. It was like the summer of '81. It was right before Kick-Ass Monthly started. So I hadn't been to a lot of shows. I think I had only been to at that time. I think I had only been to one concert. So I didn't know what to expect. I'd
Yeah,
never
yeah,
been like in a club, and it just blew me away. And it was like it was unbelievable. I was like, how could a band like this like not be famous?
yeah,
That's all I kept thinking. They were so good. Their songs were just as good or better than the copies they played, and they were playing, Priest and AC/DC and Sabbath and all sorts of really cool stuff. I'm like, man, their songs are just as good. This is crazy, you know? So yeah, it was definitely that first album.
I was curious over years of promoting Twisted Sister and the interviews you did with D. I was curious. Did you ever ask him anything about? So why was this decision to okay? D was going to be the front man and JJ is gonna because initially they had JJ come out and do a set on lead vocals. Did you ever get into any of that? You
What do
know,
you mean with
like did you
them?
ask him, hey, why did JJ quit singing? You know, and why did you just kind of become the front man? I was just kind of curious, you know. Because I heard a lot
No.
of stories in the club days, like JJ would come out and he do some lead vocals and then D
Well,
would
you
do the
got to
rest.
remember when in those club days, they played three sets.
Yeah,
So there was a story. I don't know if it's 100% true or not, but I think in the beginning when D first joined the band, when he still had brown hair.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I didn't see them at that stage, but there's a story that went around Long Island, and again, I don't know if this is
yeah, yeah.
100% true, but supposedly they were playing a gig. I can't remember where it was supposed to be, and the backstage area. It was in the winter, and the backstage area had no heat.
Hmm.
So when they came off stage in between sets, they were sitting in a freezing cold dressing room, and I'm sure you've seen Dee Snider perform. He's an animal on
Yeah,
stage.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
supposedly he was just covered in sweat. And then he went into this freezing room and he developed, like, I don't know if it was pneumonia or some kind of bronchial thing.
Uh,
And it's actually what made his voice raspy. And before he didn't have that rasp in his voice. And so after that, so to prevent further damage to his vocal cords, he only did the first two sets.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so when they came out to do the third set, he didn't even come out on stage, and it was JJ and Eddie Ojeda would split up the singing. It was mostly JJ,
Yeah.
and even during the regular set, JJ was they called him the mouthpiece, because D would do a lot of talking and joking, but JJ did as much, too. So, and again, it was to stretch the show out because they had to play, because back in the day, I don't know if they really still do it now, but the drinking cutoff in New York is much later than everywhere else in the country. It's
Okay.
4 a.m. instead
Oh
of
wow.
2 a.m.
Yeah.
So they would come on at 11, and they had to stretch it out to like 3 o'clock in the morning. So they
Wow.
had to play like three sets, and so in between
Yeah.
songs, they would talk a lot. They would try to get you to buy their shirts at the end of the set, stuff like that, and they would just BS back and forth, and
Mm.
it was like a comedy show mixed in with the music because most of the time it was really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were on Mark's podcast, did you learn anything from him or about him or Twisted Sister that you didn't previously know before going on there?
Not really, because he wanted to interview me, which I thought was really cool. He really didn't want me to grill him with questions. I mean,
I got you. I got you. Yeah.
I kind of knew, what I needed to know. The only thing that I kind of threw at him that kind of took him back was, I don't know how familiar you are with seeing them play, but he used to do this thing, especially at the end of songs or in certain spots of songs. And Mark is a big, strong dude,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So he used to take his fist and he would punch the body of the bass, and then he would punch the top of the headstock, and he would do it fast. So it was kind of like a tomahawk motion or something.
Mm.
And I asked him, I said, "Do you have a name for that move?" And he's like thrown back. He's like, "Whoa, man, I never even thought of that." You know. So I said, "Man, you got to come up with a name and trademark it, put it on a T-shirt or something." And he
Yeah.
told me about the time he actually broke a bass doing that. So that was kind of cool.
Wow. Wow. And what's that like for you, John, to go all these years of, promoting other bands and interviewing other musicians to having the opportunity to go on some of these other podcasts and you're everyone they're interested in talking to, kind of on the other side now.
Yeah, I mean, even with you, man, it blows
Yeah.
me away that you still want to talk to me.
Well, it's like, it's like, I mean, I can't believe I've been doing this long as I have, but
Yeah,
talk to somebody like you and find out that, you got connections to Metallica and Twisted Sister. I mean, those are great stories to be able to tell.
Yes, thank you. Well, I started out, I started out as a schmuck. I had no idea what I was
Yeah,
doing, but a quote unquote journalist, and the reason that I stopped inputting so much into Kick-Ass Monthly after a couple of years was I wanted to be in a band,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
even though I had no musical talent, I had to figure out a way. So I wanted to be on the other side of the mic, you know. And I
yeah.
actually wrote a song about that. There's a Dead End Kidz song called "The Other Side," and that's what the song is about. The song is about being on the microphone side instead of the audience side, but I know what it's like to be on the other side too.
See, and
So it's
that's
how
what
does
I dig. That's what I dig about talking to a guy like you because, not even knowing that you talk like, oh, I don't really have any talent as a singer, but I wanted to give it a shot. Even that part of your story, I dig because it's like a lot of people have their so-called dreams, but they don't do nothing about it. I mean, you gotta
what
give it a shot.
it's weird. It wasn't really like it's like you hear these guys talk. Oh, the first time I heard Kiss, I said that's what I want to do. When
Yeah,
I was a kid, the first time I heard Kiss, that thought didn't even come into my head. I'm like, I can't do anything like that.
yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, I tried to play drums and I tried to play guitar, and it just didn't work out. I understood it here, but to get it to come through here, it wasn't happening. So,
See, that blows me away.
um,
A guy, you tell me that, I don't even think that I have talent as a singer, and you got a little more talent than me. But I dig the fact, even if you had that mindset that it's something that that you wanted to try to live out. I mean, and obviously you succeeded somewhat because you formed the Dead End Kids. You got a logo design. You got some CDs printed up. Um, People can go still check it out on YouTube if I urge them to do that, just to find out a little more about who John Erigo is here and what he's about. And I dig that because you've had some success with it. Like you even told me in some of the past interviews that, well, I'm really the guy that keeps the Dead End Kids even going. I'm the one that keeps the Facebook page up and any kind of promotion for the band, and that takes a lot of dedication. And then I dig the fact that, okay, maybe the band's no longer active, we're not really doing too much, but we keep a name out there, and then at the same time you're promoting other bands, so it's not all about you, if you know what I mean. You're
thank
trying
you,
to,
thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, the way I got into it was all pretty much by mistake,
yeah,
you know. Um, in the town that I grew up in was Baldwin, New York. It was the same town that Dee Snider grew up in. Um, so my brother, who was a year, he's 14 months younger than me, so he was in the grade below me. He had a friend. Now this is like um early 80s, right? And this is like Kick-Ass Monthly was already going,
mm,
and I was out of high school. I was starting my first year in college. My brother had this friend who was a guitar player, 16-year-old kid. Now this is 1980. I think I met him in 81, something like that.
yeah.
Anyway, so think about it. It's 1981. This kid is 16 years old. And I swear to God, and I have the videos to prove it, he could play Eddie Van Halen note for note
Mm,
at 16 back then.
yeah.
And I didn't believe my brother when he told me. He's like, and this kid lived like 5 minutes from me. So I went over to his house, and he had a couple of guys that play with. They weren't really a band, I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, who the hell is this
Mm,
kid? So I had another bunch of friends that had a local band in a different town, the next town over, and their band had just broken up. So I was good friends with the bass player and the drummer, and I was like the middleman. I said, "Hey, you guys should jam with this guitar player. This guy's freaking amazing." So the drummer, Jeff Goldstein, and the bass player, Rob Dexter, Rob Dexter's in a band called Kings County now that's doing pretty
mm,
good for themselves down here in Florida. Um, they had a band called Burning Ash that had just broken up. So Jeff had a like rehearsal stuff in his basement. So I took Rob over there and they started jamming. And it was great. It was like magic. They sounded awesome.
yeah, yeah.
And so I said, you guys need to do a show. And they looked at me and they're like, well, we don't have a singer. I'm like, well, we'll find one.
Yeah.
So So me and the drummer Jeff, trying to remember what tour it was. It might have been Screaming for Vengeance. We went to see Judas Priest at Madison Square Garden. We're on the train ride home. Now Rob Halford was my Frank Sinatra. He was
Yeah, yeah,
everything to me,
yeah.
singer. And I was so inspired that night. I turned to Jeff. I'm the singer.
Hmm.
He goes, you don't know how to sing. I said, I don't give a shit. It's not about me. It's about you guys. Just get out there. I'll fake it. Whatever. I'll do the best I can. We'll have a blast. We'll play a show, and that'll be it. And then you guys do whatever you want, right? So our school and a local high school in Baldwin had this thing called Saturday Night Alive, not live, like
Yeah, yeah.
TV. And one of the things was they had a band in the school auditorium, which was like a 2,000 seat with a big stage and lights and everything.
Oh, wow.
And they would have a band coming in. If you went to the high school, you got in for free, and they had like movies and snacks and stuff. It was a way to keep kids off the streets, you know.
Yeah.
So we got hooked up. We had to play at the show, and at the school. We're like, all
Sure,
right, this is
sure.
great. So we start rehearsing and stuff. We take pictures. We make a makeshift like tour book, and so it's hilarious stuff. The band was called Prowler. So we play the gig, and we are going to play two sets. It was all cover songs: Judas Priest, Riot,
Wow.
Kiss, Van Halen, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, all this really cool shit that I couldn't sing for the life of me, but I had a blast. So we're playing the show. The first set goes great. Come off, come back on. Guy goes into a drum solo, and a fight breaks out in the crowd.
Oh, wow.
Guy's getting his face kicked in. He had that plastic surgery. They called the cops. The cops are trying to blame me because I cursed in high school.
Oh,
It
wow.
was it was the rock and roll fairy tale.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it was great. It was fun. Boom, we did the show. It ended a little weird. It was over. Next year, we said, "Hey, man, we should play that thing again." We didn't stay together. We didn't jam or nothing. We said, "Hey, we should do that thing again." So we go to a rehearsal studio this time to rehearse songs. Guy comes into the room and goes, "You guys want a gig?" They're like, "Oh, we got one. We're playing the high." He goes, "No, no, 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 man. I got this place. You guys should go play."
Wow.
So that's how it started. We went and played the same place that Metallica played, the Rio Theater in Valley Stream, New York, when Ride the Lightning was coming out.
Wow, wow.
Infamous show there in Long Island, a small theater. Um, so yeah, that's how it started. I wasn't supposed to really, and I have the two shows from the high school, full shows on videotape that somebody filmed up from up on the balcony, and you can see the difference between the first show and the second show. I mean, I was like running all over the place, and I was having a blast, man. And the reason I wanted to do it was passion. I had passion for the music, and
Yeah.
I know I wasn't a good singer, and eventually I got okay. I mean, the Dead
But
End
you
Kids,
must have had some kind of stage presence or charisma. And I say that not having been there because the way you describe people reacting or, the crowd, I mean, there was something there.
yeah, we had like, I mean, you gotta remember, it was the first time ever in front of people. That
Yeah, yeah.
first show was probably like 300 or 400 people, and we had the videotape of the show. And I remember, like the next week, there was a local deli across the street from the high school, and they're like, "Oh man, bring the tape in. We'll show it. After school, we have all the kids can come watch it." We're laughing. We're like, "Who the hell's gonna come and watch video of these four knuckleheads?" Sure enough, we show up, and you couldn't even get in the place. It was jammed. It was great. It was so cool. Like local legends, like after one show, it was
I mean, I
hilarious.
love, I love that. I mean, so many people, like even you see these people go on American Idol and they kind of embarrass themselves in front of everybody thinking they're so great and they really do have very little talent. Some of them don't really have a clue,
Hey, I was good at faking it, man.
but to not even have any really kind of background as a musician, just kind of kind of
It
huffing
was
and puffing.
passion. It was
Yeah,
all
yeah.
passion, man. That's
And,
all it
and
was. I just loved the music so much, and I really wanted this kid to become famous. And we played a string of shows. We didn't play too many
yeah,
shows. And then one day he walked in a rehearsal. He goes, "I don't want to play metal anymore." And I just
okay,
looked at him like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, I want to do like jazz and stuff." And I was like,
okay,
"Okay."
yeah.
And
I
we got
showed
another
you.
guitar player, and then we changed our name to Lifeline, and we wrote songs. We made a demo, but it just never worked out, and in and out of bands for years after that.
And see
Just I
again,
never found.
a guy that went from not really having any kind of experience doing any of this. I mean, the next step up, like you're saying, is you're writing your own original tunes now. The guy in the studio is hearing you, and he's like, "Hey, want to get you guys want to
Yeah,
say it big, you know?"
yeah, it was cool stuff, man. It was fun, you know. And then in the Dead End Kids again, it was another thing. I hadn't sung in a band in a long time, and I was working in a factory, and one of the guys, how we doing on time? We all right?
Yeah, we all right still. Yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're we all what am I saying? There was a guy at work was having a July 4th block party, and there were four guys from all worked in this. We all worked in the same factory. It was a big factory. They were jamming. They were going to play like 5 or 6 songs or whatever at this party. And one of the guys I kind of knew is drummer Tommy Tomahalco. Uh, and he says to me, he goes, "Didn't you sing in a band? Didn't you tell me you sang in a band a long time ago?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to come down and do some songs?" I'm like, "Well, that depends. What kind of songs are you doing?" You know? And they were playing like Green Day and Weezer. They were playing all this weird
Yeah, yeah.
radio stuff at the time. And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "I'm not into that stuff." I was like, "You guys got to do some Van Halen or Judas Priest or something." So we compromised, you know? And we went and did this July 4th thing. I don't know. I played maybe like 4 or 5 songs with them,
Wow.
and then again the same kind of thing. "Hey man, there's this bar in town where we work, and I can get you guys in there if you want to do it." And I'm like, "Oh God, here we go again."
And what's cool about this is this I'm assuming predates the internet even. So you're talking about
Yeah.
word of mouth. I mean, you know, even being
Hmm.
in LA where I'm from, I remember back in the days, people the way bands would get people to find out about them as they go hang out on Hollywood Boulevard and
Yeah, they'd hang out
pass out
flyers and stuff.
flyers. You know, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I remember talking to James Hetfield about that the first time I met him, because we were asking him about Motley Crue. You know, when Motley Crue's first time, we're like, "What's the deal with these guys with the hair and the makeup and the
yeah,
leather and stuff?" And he's like, and they were just like, "Yeah, that's that whole scene with the flyers and stuff." He's like, "We're not really into that. That's like they called them the posers back then, you know."
yeah, 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 yeah. And
which
you
is
know,
a tricky which is a tricky term,
yeah,
because a poser is somebody who's doing something fake,
yeah,
right? People used to think just because you spiked up your hair and you wore makeup, you were a poser, and that's not true. You're only a poser if you don't like that and you're
yeah,
doing
yeah,
it because you think it's going to get you laid or attention or whatever. I mean, you could be into death metal and you
yeah,
could wear like makeup like Abbott, you know,
yeah,
and be a poser because you know then you go home and listen to Barry Manilow or something, you
yeah,
know. It's a
yeah.
tricky term.
Yeah, I mean, you
That
know,
was
yeah, let me ask you a question about that because one thing I always loved about Dee Snider, especially and Twisted Sister, is you know if you go back to Stay Hungry when you know they had that big breakout with We're Not Going to Take It and I Want to Rock. I mean, they were so, especially Dee, the anti-establishment. That's why if you remember when he spoke up at those Senate hearings, I mean, the way he looked, and then on the flip side, he talked like the most educated man in the room, and yet he looked the way he did, and he was
Yep.
so anti-establishment back in the day. Um, Whereas I look at some of the things he posts he's made and stuff all through the pandemic and shaming people about wearing masks or not wearing a mask. I kind of sometimes think to myself, dude, you used to be so anti-establishment. I get people changed, but like now you're on the side of the very people that were trying to ban your records, you know?
Yeah, man, things change, you know. But I mean, back then
Yeah,
it wasn't so much. It was anti-establishment, but it was also, you know, that the Twisted Sister always had the mentality of do what you want when you want,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um, because if to go on stage the way they looked, you really had to have you really had to have that attitude, because
yeah,
they
yeah,
looked something straight out of like a transvestite Rocky Horror review show, man.
yeah,
It was weird. It was great, but it was definitely different. I mean, that's, you know, got them a lot of attention just because of the way they looked.
yeah.
But obviously, once they plugged in and started playing, it was all over, man. They were just taking heads
I'm
off, and
kind of
it was
interested to see what he
amazing.
does next. I understand he's working on some kind of horror movie. I can't wait to see how that comes
Yeah,
out. You know, and I must say it's kind of interesting his solo career because I think his last two solo albums, you know, have probably been his best. And yet he seems to going to be hanging it up, not doing any more soul albums, but
Yeah, I
back
mean
home.
the last two solo albums are kind of strange because he didn't write anything,
Yeah,
and back in the day, he was the only one that was writing for Twisted. He wrote
it's
everything.
it's funny you say that because I did love the last two solos for the. I mean, I think they were more kind of actual centered than some of the past ones, but I that's the first thing I noticed that he didn't write anything, and I've heard him talk in interviews, and it's kind of sad because he was a great songwriter back in the day, but it seems like he kind of feels like that he lost that I don't know if you want to say passion or he feels that he's not as gifted a songwriter as he once was. And
I think it was more like a challenge. I think it was what's
Jamie
his name?
Josta,
Jamie Josta was the one who kind of said to him, "You should do like new metal. You
yeah,
should do like a more modern sounding
yeah,
stuff." And D was like, I don't know how to write that stuff, and
yeah,
that's what happened. They got guys to write it for him, and yeah, I like the two albums too.
yeah,
And a guy like D, I can't see him stopping altogether.
yeah, yeah.
I think there's just too much passion inside of him, and he's too good at what he does.
Yeah, maybe he needs to take a break or who knows, but
Well,
yeah,
again, after his legacy, all these years, he's earned the right to step back, do
sure,
what he wants
sure,
to do. Maybe it'll recharge his batteries to go back out because you can do a movie,
yeah,
which is really cool, but at the end of a take, if you do really good, there's no audience. There's
yeah,
nobody to feed off of, which is what he's used to. So, it's like with Kiss. They say, "Oh, this is the end of the road." And if they're sitting at home for a year without doing
yeah.
anything, and like somebody from France calls up and says, "Hey boys, you want to do Hellfest again?" You think they're gonna say
No, I
no?
mean,
I
I
really.
don't believe it's totally the end of the road. I believe it's the end of long tours like that. I'm sure we're gonna do stuff from time to time. I will say in regards to Dee Snider, I think it's cool that in regards to his legacy, he got a second chance, to come when Twisted came back. Because there was a time, when like after he did Widowmaker, he wasn't very popular. His career had really gone down. I love it. He got a second chance, to kind of kick things in the ass again and do it one more go around.
Yeah, I loved Widowmaker. I got to see them. That was a really good band. Al Petrelli on guitar,
Yeah,
and then he had the SMF band too, which was really fun.
yeah,
We was playing twisted songs, but the problem with that was grunge. That was the
yeah,
grunge
sure.
era,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and somebody like D who was like the and it's I hate it, but he was like the poster boy for hair metal because he
yeah,
had a lot of hair,
yeah.
but they weren't really hair metal.
No,
But yeah, he kind of got crushed in that time, and it was tough. I remember there was some tough times there for him and the
like I don't
band
know if you've
members.
seen the behind the music they did, but he was talking in that about how he had had all this huge success with Twisted, and then he had pretty much literally lost everything, but luckily he was able to get it back.
Well, what helped too was over time, we're not going to take it. Kind of got like started getting played at sporting events,
Yeah,
and then it started showing up on commercials and movies and stuff. And it kind of got like a second life going,
yeah,
you know, which is another thing that drives me crazy about the Super Bowl. You never hear like anybody that plays the halftime of the game. You never hear them play during the games,
yeah, 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 yeah.
right? They
Yeah,
play
right.
Ozzy, Metallica, Kiss,
Yeah,
Twisted Sister.
I was
How come
surprised
that's
when
not the halftime of the
yeah,
Super Bowl, Mr.
I was
Goodell?
yeah, I was surprised a few years ago when Roger and Brian from Queen got to play the Oscars. I'm like, that was the most rocking Oscars will ever be.
Yeah, right.
Well, John, I can't believe, it's about that time again. Running out of time, so I'm going to let you go. But thanks for doing this. This will go up next week, and I'll talk to you again next month, my friend. Take care, and hope everything you get better with your house and everything. Okay.
Jason, you are the man. Thank you so much for this
Anytime,
opportunity,
brother.
everybody out there.
Bye
Keep
bye.
rocking, man. Thank you.
Take care, John.